Pokemon games were a big part of my life, and I have so many good memories with them, so let's check out this ranking of the Pokemon games, which is from Strawhead Midas, and the video is called Ranking Every Pokemon Game from Worst to Best.
I'm ranking every main series Pokemon game from worst to best. The worst games are Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
Well,
Get him! No, please, I still haven't spoken to a girl yet.
These games are...
okay, that's very funny. But also, yeah, I guess it was a very disappointing remake, especially after the Gen 3 remakes that came out many years earlier.
aren't inherently bad.
But we already knew what we should expect with Switch Pokemon.
They're absolutely playable, and if you like them, I understand why. They are just the worst way to...
But it's just a bit unfortunate because it's really this kind of style that I don't enjoy as much. And there were so many cool ideas and renders how the game could look like. And also, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu looked so much better. And if they just made these games in that style and included the Platinum content and just stayed faithful, it would have been so extremely much better.
to play the Sinnoh region, and they were a disappointing game from the start. This game ended up feeling like a DS experience on the Switch with a full price tag. There are a lot of things I still like about these games, though. I like how flushed out the underground is, and I like how they made it a lot easier to catch certain Pokemon. But that's where the pros start to end, because this game had so much potential, but it ended up being too faithful of a remake. With a little more time and a little more content, I guarantee this game could have been way higher on the list, but it ended up feeling so flat, especially when you compare it to other games, that it has to be the worst. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are
okay, with this I have a problem. The second worst game, because I really enjoyed the first generation of Pokemon, and I just had so much fun with these games. I guess they might even be my favorite Switch Pokemon games. I don't know. I still enjoy some of the other ones as well, but yeah.
Extremely weird games.
But of course, they have a lot of different mechanics and they are not like normal Pokemon games. So I can understand why somebody would say that they are not the best ones.
I think it was possible to get a Pokemon game worse than these on Switch, but it happened. It made a lot of sense for them to capitalize off Pokemon Go's success and pull those people over to the Switch. But this game just isn't it. This seems like a good introductory game for kids who have never even heard of Pokemon, but for people who've been playing...
It still felt nice to have Kanto in this game. Actually, for me, the most disappointing part of this game is that the extra content from Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green are not included in this game. There would have been a very good opportunity to do that.
For a while, it's just so bad. This game does have some good things though. I think it looks really good visually.
Exactly.
And I like how they made it so you're starting.
I like this game a lot as a reference for how 2D remakes on the Switch could look like. Because also, I like that there are some 2D Zelda games on the Switch and one of them is a remake, but I don't like the look as much, and this kind of look would be much better also for those Zelda games. And for example, if we ever get a Minish Cap remake, I hope we have more this kind of look than the other one that we are having right now for 2D Zelda.
Starter can use the HM, so you don't have to dedicate a full Pokemon to being an HM slave. If they had taken the art style for this game, got rid of the overworld encounters, and used this as the base for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, I'm sure these games would have sold like hotcakes. Pokemon Sun and Moon's biggest crime is being overall decent. I like the Alola.
It's interesting how he ranks Pokemon Sun and Moon lower than Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, because people were very upset about that game, but... well, actually, I enjoyed Pokemon Sun and Moon still a lot when playing it.
The region, but I have no reason to play these games since they made Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon so much better. These games just feel like they're lacking anything appealing, and they fixed that with the other titles. I'm a certified Team Skull hater. I don't like them as a villain organization. I don't think they're the worst, but in this game especially...
well, I just think a lot of the other villain organizations were much better, except the one in the newest Pokemon games. But it was very cool in this game that you had this extra city that was owned by Team Skull, and I liked a lot of things about the world of Sun and Moon.
I just did not like them. I like how they didn't take themselves too seriously, but I think that they could have done it in other ways to make them more appealing. But I like the Aether Foundation, and I like how...
yeah, that story was very interesting.
They contrast them so well, so they get a pass. I also like the Ultra Beasts. I think they were a good idea. I didn't like Z moves all that much either.
Yeah,
I think they were a swing.
Like, we had Mega Evolutions in Gen 6, and then they were like, oh, now we have Z moves. Have fun with them.
Gonna miss. They had to follow Mega Evolutions, so I can't fault them. They just weren't great. But I do like how they kept Mega Evolutions in this game. It made it so it didn't feel like it was a one-time thing. But when there's better versions of a game out there, it's hard to put this any higher. I wanted to like...
Actually, I don't remember having Mega Evolutions in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Like, maybe I just didn't play that game long enough to find them, but I just didn't really use them or have them in the game. I don't know. Maybe you just get them later. But they definitely are not a big part of the story as they were in Gen 6.
Scarlet and Violet way more than I did. These games aren't bad, but if they waited a year and then released them, I think they would have been so much better.
Yeah.
They feel like they were rushed in a lot of ways, especially graphically. These games have really bad performance issues, and it's noticeable right away. But performance...
Yeah, unfortunately, it's really feels a little bit like, I don't know, a Nintendo 64 game or something like this. It's still fun to play this game, but I actually never finished the game, also because I was very busy with the university when I started playing this game. I think I will finish this game still, and I put a lot of hours into it. And I actually like just running around the overworld and just basically farming levels, because you can just take out your Pokemons and they just defeat wild Pokemons, and grinding in this game is a bit more fun than in other Pokemon games, but it just really doesn't feel like a Pokemon game somehow. It's like such a different game. It's very interesting when I think about it.
Issues aside, I don't like how they made this game an open world game and then didn't let you explore it in any order you want. Not being able to do things in the order you want made this game feel way more linear than it should. And don't get me...
Actually, that's not a big problem for me. Like, just the open world aspect in general just feels very different from all the other Pokemon games. And I don't mind new things. I mean, I still like this game a lot, but it just feels very different from all the other Pokemon games. And I would like a good, more standard Pokemon game again.
Started on the villain organization, they're just a bunch of kids who are antsy about being in school. But this game did have some really good things. I like terastallization a lot. I understand it's lazy, but at the end of the day, it's still...
Nothing beats Mega Evolutions. Of course, I understand why they changed this, because they really want you to have the option to do the special form for every Pokemon. And that was just not it with Mega Evolutions, but still, I like Mega Evolutions so much more.
Still fun. I think that this game had a really good idea of having a past version and a future version, and I think Area Zero towards the end made that even better. If these games had better performance and better DLC, I think they would have been way higher on this list. The old Pokemon games are fun, but they do not hold up as well as people think. Gold and Silver are here because when you play...
I don't know. I have a lot of love for the old Pokemon games.
Play them, they are extremely dated. I like these games, but at the end of the day...
Yeah, and... I don't know, with Pokemon, it's the one kind of series where you can still play the old games very comfortably and enjoy them.
I'm never going to pick these over Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Okay, yeah, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are just too good, but still.
I can understand why these games are lacking. This is the second generation of Pokemon, and you never think the sequel is going to do as well as the
Well, Empire Strikes Back, anyone?
original. So they just
Dune Part 2, anyone?
decided to prop it up with Kanto to make this game feel more complete. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you look at it, because it could be more for you to play, but it could also be really bad pacing issues. I grew up with these games, but at the end of the day, they did not age well. And Red and Blue are on the same page. These games...
No, I'm sorry. I have so much love for Pokemon Red and Blue. I mean, those were also my first Pokemon games. Even though when I was starting with Pokemon, it was already the time of the 4th generation. But still, I bought an old Game Boy off eBay and I just played this game so much. And I enjoy it to this day. And I don't know, it's still something so special. But yeah, let's just listen to what he says.
Games are at baseline fun, but they still suffer from the same thing that Gold and Silver did. The only reason I'm rating these higher than Gold and Silver is because they were the original games and they started the whole series. If I had to pick between playing Gold and Silver and Red and Blue, I would probably pick Red and Blue 8 out of 10 times. These were the first Pokemon games I ever played, but
Oh
at
my
the end of
goodness,
the
they
day,
make me
these games
feel
do not
so nice and at home when I just hear the music and see them.
hold a candle to some of the other games in the series. I'm combining Yellow and Crystal because they're both the best ways to play the Game Boy Color era of Pokemon. Both of these games felt like a better...
Actually, I never liked Pokemon Yellow so much because it just felt very weak with Pikachu at the beginning, and it was so difficult to beat the first few gyms, but also it was at a time when I was very small and just getting started with Pokemon. But also, like, I had a cartridge for Pokemon Yellow, but actually I gave it to just some random people in my school at that time because I just didn't want it so much.
Better packaged than their source material, and I'm always going to pick playing these over playing the originals. Pokemon Yellow especially is better because you can get all 3 starter Pokemon in one game, which is not possible in any other game. These are just definitive versions of the other games, so I have to put them higher than the originals. Diamond and Pearl are really solid games, but when you compare them to other Pokemon games, there are a lot of flaws. Before I get judo clapped, Gen 4 is my second favorite generation of Pokemon, but these games just were not it. These games had really bad performance issues. It would take 4 years to beat any Pokemon battle because of how slow it would move. And there were so many HMs in this game, it was hard to navigate through. These games did a
Yeah, with HMs, I really don't have any problems. I don't know. I understand that it's a bit annoying when you have to put them in your Pokemon team instead of some attacks, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't mind them so much as other people did.
A lot of things really well, though. It had a really good story, and it had the best soundtrack in all of Pokemon. I'm really glad they released Platinum because these games needed some love. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are great games. It just feels like a way better version to play Gen 7. Everything I said about the
that's one way of saying it. Like, those games are just so divisive because people are very upset about that they are not different enough. But when Pokemon Platinum released, I guess nobody really complained, or with Smaragd and the other definitive versions. And I should go a bit deeper into this topic and understand, like, why was this version not so well received, but other definitive versions were well received? But I guess it's maybe because it feels like a bit more like a new game and should be like a new game and not a definitive version. Maybe.
Foundation and Team Skull still stand, especially in this game, but these games are just so much more fun to play. These games added content that it felt like a no-brainer to add, and it has one of the hardest Pokemon battles in Pokemon's history. There are things that Sun and Moon do better, like having better encounters with the Ultra Beasts, but this game just feels like a better package. I'm glad I gave these games a shot because I almost didn't because of how disappointed I was with the originals. I think my hottest Pokemon take is that Sword and Shield are really good games.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Please don't. I just started talking to a girl from Ancestry.com.
Pokemon on the Switch overall has had some lacking times, but I think...
Well, actually, Sword and Shield, I did enjoy these games, but I don't really feel like I want to replay them as much as other Pokemon games. They are definitely not the worst games, and I don't have any problem with no national decks, which was a huge problem for a lot of people. But they do feel a bit unfinished. Not as unfinished as some other games that came out a bit later, but there are just some very strange parts about these games where I really feel like, come on, you could have done more than this. And maybe if they released these games on the 3DS, I would like them a lot more because they do feel a little bit like 3DS games that were just upscaled for the Switch. But yeah, in general, these games had a lot of nice things and I don't dislike them as much. And also some graphical areas where they really looked good, to be honest.
I think that we judged this game a little too harshly. This was the first new Pokemon generation.
But yeah, that's not it. This looked so bad
on the Switch, and I think that it did a really good job of making that transition. This game also suffers from graphical issues like Scarlet and Violet, but it's way less pronounced. The wild area suffers from graphical issues, but at the end of the day, the routes...
Yeah, and a lot of things about the arena fights were disappointing. I don't know, and also with the Team Yell and all of this stuff... Yeah, that was not so interesting.
And cities look great. I think that Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing are hit or miss. I didn't think they were crazy, but I didn't think they were bad. This was also the first Pokemon game to implement DLC instead of a third title.
And actually, I heard many times that the DLC in this game is extremely good. And I should really try it because I still didn't... I finished those games, but I didn't buy the DLC and play through it. And I should really do that, and probably then I will still get a lot of enjoyment out of these games.
Title, and I think that was a good idea for this game. Before the DLC, this game felt really flat, and I don't like that they paywalled extra content, but if I had to pick between paying $40 for a DLC and $60 for a new game, I would pick the DLC. And I like both of these DLCs way better than Scarlet and Violet's, but I think Sword and Shield are extremely overhated. The switch up on Pokemon X and Y is
okay, this game I would rank so much higher. These are basically my favorite Pokemon games. I beat them how many times? I guess 5 times or something like this. I just love these games from the first time I played them. Like, just there's so many things about these games that I just love.
Unreal to me. People used to trash on this game for not being a good game, and now people are loving it.
Yeah, because people are finally waking up.
And I've always liked this game, and I think it did a really good job of jumping from the DS to the 3DS. The biggest issue with this game is it was a big downgrade graphics-wise. The 3D models just did not look great at the time.
I liked them.
And they still don't to this day, where the sprites before it looked ageless. I like Team Flare as a villain organization, but they're pretty forgettable. And I think
the gyms in this game were so incredible.
The whole AZ story arc was really nice, but Mega Evolutions really carried.
Yeah. I'm just very happy that we will get a new game in this region, and I hope so much that it's not only in Lumiose City, because some leaks said that the game would only be in Lumiose City, but I just hope we get the entire Kalos region in the new game.
This game, I think it was the best way they could have introduced gimmicks to Pokemon. I just wish that they added more of them and they felt more unique. But I'm glad that people are starting to realize that these games are perfect middle-of-the-road Pokemon games. Ruby and Sapphire were the first games on the Game Boy Advance, and they were really fun. Seeing Pokemon in color like this for the first time was crazy.
I have so many good memories to this game and to Smaragd. That was just that time when a friend of mine had Sapphire GBA cartridge and playing it on her DS Lite, and I just liked it so much to look at this game and play it myself.
And I think both of these games did a really good job of making that leap. These games have a few issues which makes them annoying to go back and play. In the mid to late game, you have to surf a lot. I don't think that Team Aqua and Team Magma were great villain organizations. Other than those, these games were great. They introduced double battles for the first time. They had a ton of...
Yeah, Gen 3 just has its very own feeling and style, which is just so... How should I describe it? It's like its own thing, like its own feeling, and it's just so incredible. I love it a lot.
Great new Pokemon, and they have my favorite legendaries in the series. Even though there are better ways to play this generation, these games still hold their own. Now, Fire Red and Leaf Green are both great. I'm not a Gen 1er, but I do understand where they're coming from. But I think that Fire Red and Leaf Green are the best way to play the Kanto region. They added a lot of new content like the islands. They were a lot more balanced.
Yeah, and that content should have really been in the Let's Go games
than the originals. And they only made changes that made these games more accessible than the original. And it even had gambling. I love the Gen 1 games. I would...
Well, with a lot of things that happen right now, I shouldn't say anything about gambling. It's bad, don't do it.
I wouldn't say they're the best, but they hold their own extremely well. Legends Arceus was something I did not expect Pokemon to produce, but they did it, and it worked really well. I didn't think...
Yeah, that's the one Switch Pokemon game I didn't play, but I'm still planning to do it sometime, but it just didn't look so appealing to me. I don't know.
Going back in time was going to be a mechanic that worked for Pokemon, but it did really well. I like how this game had the option of doing quests. It gave me a lot of things to do, which made it really
That's interesting how he ranks it as the highest Switch Pokemon game.
Fun to play. I like how interactive the catching was. It was like a stealth simulator for Pokemon. But just like all the other games, this game had issues. I didn't like the Hisuian versions of most Pokemon. Like, I love Arcanine, but I don't like how this Arcanine
just the graphics look so much like a pre-alpha build of a game.
Looks like he ate a bunch of rocks. The gameplay does start to feel repetitive towards the end of the game, but I think this game did a really good job of trying something new and doing it well. I didn't think this game was going to do well because it had to compete with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, but it ended up being the complete opposite. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire took everything that was great about Ruby and Sapphire and just made it so much better.
Gen 6 is so incredible. I mean, it had X and Y and then these two games.
These remakes were really fun, especially as someone who loves the Generation 3 games. I think these games did a perfect job of implementing new Pokemon mechanics into...
Yeah, these games I've also beaten many times.
To an old favorite. Adding Mega Evolution to this game was something that I didn't think was going to work very well, but they ended up knocking it out of the park. These games also benefit from being newer, so they had things like the physical and special split, which made these games feel like they were a lot fresher. And even though...
And also the fairy type.
It was really short, I think having the Delta episode was just a great way...
Oh yeah, the Delta episode. Like, still to this day, feels so epic.
Way to acknowledge old fans. It was really short.
Like, it feels a bit like, okay, Pokemon X and Y had a very epic story. Well, I guess this story was not epic enough. Let's just add this thing to match that.
Short, but it gave acknowledgement to the fans who had been playing for years. To this day, these games just amaze me, and they're one of the games I play through the most often. I really like Pokemon Black and White.
Yeah, speaking of epic games.
Understand their devices.
I mean, games that are epic, not the studio.
but they are still so fun. It stinks that we didn't get more games on this engine because these games look beautiful. The sprites felt so alive and all the battles felt cinematic. The problem with these games is that they didn't allow you to use Pokemon out of this region. So a lot of people got stuck using Pokemon.
I should definitely spend a lot of time replaying Black and Black 2, Black and White 1 and 2. Because I did play these games when they came out, but I didn't replay them. And I also remember them pretty well.
They don't like, which alienated a large portion of the fan base. But for fans who could get over the hump, they got to experience the best story that Pokemon has ever had. Team Plasma was really great, and I think if these games just did things a little bit differently, they could have been way better. Pokemon Platinum was just a great game from start to finish. It really showed how good Generation 4 could truly be. I'm really upset that Diamond and Pearl and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl couldn't be this good.
Well, Diamond and Pearl just came out before and they made some mistakes, and that was just corrected with this game, so I wouldn't be so upset about those games. But the remakes, yeah, that should have really been different.
This game took the elements that made Gen 4 so fun and just added on to them. This game made the story flow better, it made the game play better, and it added things that are so iconic to this day, like the Distortion World. This game really showed that if Pokemon takes their time and listens to the fans, they can make a game that's a better version of what they currently have. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are the best Pokemon.
Oh my goodness. There are just so many good Pokemon games, and when Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, I mean, I was just, how old was I? Like 9 years old, and I remember them. Also, people were walking around with this Pokewalker in school when I was like in 5th grade, and yeah, I just beat those games a few times, and I still have so good memories to them.
On remakes. They took everything that was great about Generation 2 and they just added onto it. Having Pokemon follow you on your journey was such a great idea, and it added so much connection to your teams and made it hard to put these games down even after you beat them. It had all of the content from Gold, Silver, and Crystal with 16 gyms and all of the world to explore and made it better. The fight with Red at the end is one of the best in the series, and even though this game suffered from pacing issues, it still was one of the best Pokemon experiences that you could possibly have. Pokemon Black 2.
Yeah, Pokemon on the DS is just completely ruling. But on the 3DS as well, when you just look at Gen 6.
And White 2 just did everything right. It made it so you could use Pokemon that you wanted throughout the story. It was a continuation of one of the best stories in Pokemon.
It just makes me feel a bit sad about the current state of Pokemon when I look at all of these great games that came out. I just hope so much that like Legends CA and the future games on the Switch will be better. But at the same time, it looks like Game Freak is really learning something and taking more time for the development. Because on the DS and the 3DS, it worked to have 1 year for a game, but now it's really not working anymore.
That held its own really well, and it had an incredible post-game that was full of content. These games just did so many things so perfectly, and it all combined it into one of the best Pokemon packages you can get. I didn't play these games until a few months after they came out, but these games did something so special. This game did a really good job at continuing what Black and White has set in motion, and if you haven't played it, I recommend you do. But the best Pokemon game has to be Pokemon Emerald. This game is a little bit
I don't know if Pokemon Emerald is so much better than Ruby and also the remakes of Gen 3. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm never gonna complain if Gen 3 is at the top, but still, like, is that game so much better? I mean, I remember also liking Smaragd a lot, but also the other games, all of them.
Bit dated, but if you play through this game, you'll understand why this game is held to such a high standard. It took everything that was great about Ruby and Sapphire and improved upon it. It had a better story, better pacing, and is an overall better experience. There's a reason why this game is used for Nuzlocke and ROM hacks to this day. There's something about this game that draws in fans, new and old,
Well, something about Generation 3 in general.
I can understand why. Maybe it's because Rayquaza is one of the coolest legendaries of all time, but if you haven't played Emerald, which is almost nobody, you should.
This is definitely not a ranking that I would make myself, but still, all of these opinions are very interesting, and I guess I agree with a lot of them.